Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we will be doing another discussion video. We can't be far away now from spoilers for the next upcoming set. So, as soon as that happens, of course, I will be right on it, and you can expect, breakdowns of all the new cards and predictions, for spoiler season. But today we're going to talk about Twisted Fate, because I think we've entered a sort of state where people are a little unsure about Twisted Fate. They're a little, some people think Twisted Fate does deserve a nerf. Others seem to be on the side that Twisted Fate doesn't need a nerf. And so I thought I'd give my thoughts and address. We're actually going to address a Mogwai tweet that he tweeted, I think, earlier today. And I'm just going to go through some of the things that he said. And yeah, we're just going to go into it. This isn't a, drama, Chris hates Mogwai. Not that at all. Mogwai actually got me into Legends of Runeterra, so I actually owe him a lot. And I love his videos, and I love when he streams. And this is a slight disagreement about, one thing that he said, and I'm sure if he was here to discuss it with me, he would be like, oh yeah, that's fair enough, right? So this is don't think of this as some big drama. We're just going to address a small point from a tweet that he made here. So this is him replying to someone saying that making pick a card 4 mana is the best way to slow down Twisted Fate's level up. And Mogwai responds correctly. You cannot justify nerfing a card that rarely sees play to begin with. Completely true. He's completely right about this. By the way, that's 100% correct. This second part, that is the part we're going to talk about. Twisted Fate has never been broken. Now, I agree. The word broken, to me, implies something like Lee Sin 4 mana. Lee Sin 4 mana is broken. It completely warps the game. Everything metagame-wise is warped around it as well. And, it's just way too good. That, I would say, is broken. And I don't think Twisted Fate is broken. I think Twisted Fate is too good. Now, in Mogwai's view, Twisted Fate is as good because of Targon being everywhere, and he's highlighting an issue Runeterra has had since the beginning. Archetype matchups are very polarized. For me, this isn't quite the full picture. This, for me, gives off a sense that it isn't quite what it is. But let's start with Twisted Fate has never been broken. So I agree that Twisted Fate isn't broken, but I do think that Twisted Fate is far, far, far too good to not warrant being nerfed. And evidence point number 1. Go Hard Twisted Fate came out, or, started being played, didn't come out, but, it started being played when? November sometime? We are in mid-February now, and since that time, Twisted Fate has been, you could very well argue, in the best deck in the meta the whole time, the whole 3 months, despite the first deck of that being completely nerfed and kind of disappearing somewhat from people's memories. People have then found, well, we could put Twisted Fate in this, and now this is the best deck. And now, even again, we went from Fizz TF to, we can put Twisted Fate in this, and now this is the best deck. So, kind of 3 times in a row, Twisted Fate has been in what I would argue is the best deck, or certainly one of the top 3. I don't think anyone could argue that, Go Hard Twisted Fate, Fizz Twisted Fate, and now Aphelios Twisted Fate, that they aren't in the top 3 decks. You might have, maybe not top 1, but certainly top 3. Now, considering they're all different decks, but they all have one thing in common, it's quite clear that, Twisted Fate might be a little too good. And I don't think that's, a shocking thing to say, and therefore I think it's pretty justified that Twisted Fate should get nerfed. To me, that seems quite obvious, and I think actually Aphelios should follow a similar path. I know Aphelios hasn't been out long, but to me it's pretty obvious. Aphelios is better than the average champion by, quite a bit. And I'm not calling for, when you say, these cards should be nerfed, I think a lot of people use other card games as their kind of, what they harken back to. And when cards get nerfed in other card games, they get nerfed to the ground, right? They go from really good to really bad very quickly. I've, been a big proponent of Runeterra, and the way that they have nerfed most cards is we're just going to tune this card down a bit. And it's worked successfully for a lot of different things, right? And I can't agree more with most of the things that they do balance-wise in the game. But I do think that Twisted Fate definitely should be nerfed. The way I personally would do it, just to quickly touch on this, is just make his level up harder. It's interesting that the person that Mogwai, if I can find it, responded to here, talks about slowing down Twisted Fate's level up early game by nerfing pick a card. It's odd to me that they didn't just pick the easier example of just making his level up a bit harder. Seems like a much more simple suggestion, and you don't ruin a card, like as Mogwai correctly points out. Doesn't see that much play anyway. And so to me, that's the simple way of nerfing Twisted Fate. I've seen other people's opinions of nerfing some of the cards, but I'm fairly sure that these must relate to his lore wise, right? I've definitely heard people talk about blue card and the fact that he refills mana or something, and he generates mana for you or whatever the league equivalent is. So I'm fairly sure that these probably relate to, his lore, and therefore these would be more difficult to change. However, just changing his level up to me would be a perfectly fine change, because whilst Twisted Fate is still strong in its level 1 condition, once Twisted Fate levels up, your chances of winning are really, really slim, unless they're on like 1 or 2 health. Because he'll just take over the game. There's very, very little you can do. The value that he generates when he's leveled up is it's far too much for, most decks to deal with. And that's fine. That's kind of where I want champions to be. But maybe if we just make it a bit harder for him to level up, everything would be fine. So with that said, what else did I want to pick on this? This seems like, Chris, you've done 6 minutes. What else are we here for? Well, he's highlighting an issue Runeterra has had since the very beginning. Archetype matchups are very polarized in Runeterra. Now, this is something I've heard from top streamers of the game, or, I've just heard it a lot about Runeterra. That, Runeterra tends to be rock, paper, scissors. Oh, it's always rock, paper, scissors. Oh, this beats this beats this beats this. I mean, aside from the fact that it happens in most card games, aside from the fact that that is, kind of a general thing in card games and is how you keep a game balanced, it really, really irks me, because what that suggests is that, if you take a net deck from Mobalytics or wherever else, you can't change it. Once you've got that list, there is no changing it. But I'm gonna let you in on a secret. You can actually still change those cards once you take a list from Mobalytics or wherever. You can actually just still swap in and out cards that make you better against things that you're worse against, but maybe worse against things that you're better against. And the problem is, people always say this, but I think what they don't realize is the reason Runeterra is like that is because people keep their decks the way that they are, as they are on a Mobalytics list or whatever, because that's the most optimized version at beating the field, at beating the other decks, maybe the non-tier 1 decks. If you've got a tier 1 list from Mobalytics, that list will be the one that beats, the other decks the best. Generally, that is how, these decks come about. You can change those lists if you want. If you're sick of losing to a certain specific deck, you can do that. But you see, Runeterra is different to other card games in that in Runeterra, there is a lot more decks that are viable than people realize. There is a lot of decks that are viable and you can beat, and if you become an expert at that deck, I would say anything from tier 3 to tier 1, if you become an expert at it, you will have anywhere from 55 to 56 to 65-70% win rate, depending on the deck and how good you are at the game. That doesn't happen in other card games. I played Magic, and I'm going to use the extreme example here, but oh my god, during the Terra of Oko times, Oko Thief of Crowns was this card that was just way too good, like the most overpowered thing ever. Maybe not ever in Magic, but certainly up there. And it just completely warped the game, right? And I think there was a tournament that happened in Magic where, more than like 60 or 70% of the players brought the same deck. Like, can you imagine that? I mean, I know Runeterra, like, they only bring one deck in that. But imagine if you had a one deck tournament in Runeterra. There would be no one even close to a 60 or 70%. And that, I'm using an extreme example, but, in these other card games, the tier 1 decks are solidly tier 1 in my experience. Whereas in Runeterra, it's just not quite like that. And so it really irks me when people talk about rock, paper, scissors, simply because it's like that for a reason. Because the field generally represents a good 70% of your matchups. I bet if you calculated like how many times you've seen a deck in a row, my most of like played in a row games might be 3 for the same deck. I honestly can't think of a time where I've thought, I have only seen this one deck. Honestly, the most times I might have seen the same sort of concept of a deck was maybe when Bilgewater came out and everyone was playing deep on day 1. But obviously that's not in like a super competitive format, right? So I just think that, forget the whole rock, paper, scissors thing. It impacts maybe, I don't know, 10% of your games. 1 in 10, something like that you might have a bad matchup. Like, wow, what a terrible game state, right? It just annoys me. And Twisted Fate needs to be nerfed, and maybe Aphelios too. And I just had to get this off my chest because, I like card discussion, right? I like card discussion, and I do think Twisted Fate needs to be nerfed. Let me know what you guys think, because I think another thing that this is going to be my last point. I think a reason why people are sort of reluctant to say they want to nerf Twisted Fate or Aphelios is that they're fun to play with. They're actually really fun to play with, and they're complex, and they're high skill level, and there's a lot of moving parts to it all, and you have to plan things ahead a lot, and it's really interesting to play. And I think that's why people don't want these cards nerfed, is because they don't want to, have a card that they think is really interesting to play become worse, essentially. And unfortunately, I don't think that's quite how card balance works in a game. Even if something is really fun, if it's too good, it's too good. And yeah, so as I say, I changed Twisted Fate's level up, draw more cards. This has been a sort of rant with, little coherence between the different gaps of it all. But I just, when something just irks you in the back of your mind and you just want to speak, well, thankfully I have this platform to be able to speak, and you can use your platform of commenting down below what you think. I'm sure some of you will disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine, because this is an open discussion, and that's what we're here for. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.